Princess Zalika of the Kingdom of Mariela walked through the village roads as if the whole world belonged to her. She lifted her chin high, her steps sharp and steady, and her eyes cold like she was always judging everyone she saw. Every time she appeared, people stopped what they were doing. They looked down, hid behind baskets, or hurried into their houses. Many whispered her name with fear, because Zalika had a sharp tongue, a loud voice, and a habit of speaking without kindness. She was known across Mariela as the princess with a cruel reputation. Zalika believed that being born a princess meant she could treat people however she wanted. She did not think about their feelings or their worries. She liked the way people jumped when she raised her voice. She enjoyed the way villagers stepped aside, giving her a clear path, even when she was not going anywhere urgent. She felt powerful when she saw their frightened faces. It made her feel stronger than she really was. One morning, Zalika rode her horse through the busy market. Traders were arranging fruits, spices, cloth, and handmade tools. The smell of roasted corn filled the air. Children ran around with dusty feet, laughing and chasing one another. The moment they saw Zalika's royal figure approaching, everything became quiet. A woman selling bananas quickly pulled her children to her side. A potter pushed his clay pots behind his stall, afraid Zalika might break one just to prove a point. Even the goats tied near the stand stopped bleeding for a moment, as if they too felt her presence. Zalika frowned as she looked at them. "Why do you all move so slowly?" she snapped. "Do your legs not work? This market looks like a place for snails." Her voice echoed across the stalls. People exchanged worried glances but said nothing. They never dared to answer her. If anyone tried to speak back, Zalika always mocked them until they wished they had stayed silent. One young girl named Lami had been carrying a basket of oranges. When Zalika passed, Lami bowed too quickly, and the basket slipped from her hands. Oranges rolled across the ground. Zalika laughed loudly. "Look at you," she said. "Is your head empty? Even a simple basket is too much for you." Lami bent down with shaking hands and picked up the oranges one by one. She kept her eyes on the ground the whole time, trying hard not to cry. Zalika watched her with amusement, enjoying the fear she had caused. An old man named Baresa tried to walk past her with a wooden cane. He moved slowly because his legs had grown weak. Zalika clicked her tongue loudly. "Move faster, old man. You walk like you are made of dust." Baresa bowed respectfully, even though he felt a deep pain in his heart. "Forgive me, princess," he said softly. He tried to take quicker steps, but his old body could not move any faster. Still, Zalika rolled her eyes and walked away like she was tired of seeing him. Everywhere she went, she left fear behind her. The villagers talked about her constantly, though never loudly. When she walked into the tailor's shop, they whispered. When she stood near the river, they whispered. When she appeared at the training grounds, they whispered even more. "Be careful," one farmer would say to another. "Zalika is coming." "Hide your children," a mother would tell her neighbor. "She will shout at them." "Do not look into her eyes," a trader warned. "She will think you are challenging her." The stories about Zalika spread like wind across Mariela. Some said she once made a woman repeat an apology 10 times because the bow she gave was not deep enough. Others claimed she once kicked over a basket of rice because she did not like the color of the cloth underneath. None of the stories made her look kind. Every tale made the villagers more afraid of her than before. Zalika's servants feared her as much as the villagers did. One servant named Suri woke early each morning to prepare the princess's clothes. Suri ironed every fold and brushed every lace with care. But Zalika always found something wrong. "This cloth is too rough," she would say one day. "This color is too dull," she would say the next. She never thanked Suri for anything, not even when the girl stayed up late because Zalika changed her mind about outfits again and again. Another servant, a young man named Amara, carried her bags when she traveled. He walked behind her everywhere. If he stumbled on a rock, Zalika would freeze him with an angry stare. "Can you not watch where you are going?" she would say. "Must I drag someone so clumsy behind me?" Amara would quickly apologize, though he knew he had done nothing wrong. Inside the palace, Zalika behaved the same way. During meals she complained about the food. "Too salty," she would say. "Too cold. Too plain." The royal cooks worked hard to please her, but no dish ever satisfied her. When court meetings happened, she interrupted people. When musicians played, she criticized their rhythm. When gardeners planted new flowers, she ordered them to remove them and plant others. Nothing was ever right for her. The king and queen, her parents, worried deeply about her behavior. They saw how she frightened the villagers and alienated the people inside the palace. They heard the stories of her sharp tongue. They saw the way others trembled when she entered a room. But Zalika did not see any of this as a problem. She believed that being feared was better than being respected. She believed that power meant shouting louder than everyone else. One evening, as the sun set and the kingdom glowed in orange light, Zalika walked through the palace yard. Birds were settling in the trees, singing soft evening songs. But even they went quiet when the princess stepped near. She stood with her arms crossed, wondering why everyone was always so slow, so frightened, so dull. She never wondered if she was the reason for their fear. The villagers continued whispering even when she was far away. Why is she always angry? Some wondered. What did we ever do to her? Others asked. But there were no answers. There was only fear. Zalika's cruel reputation had become a shadow that followed her everywhere, a shadow she ignored, a shadow that grew larger each day. The people of Mariela hoped something would change. They hoped their princess would soften her heart. But Zalika did not know yet that life had plans for her, plans that would turn her world upside down, plans that would test her pride, plans that would show her a lesson she never expected to learn. And in the quiet corners of the kingdom, the whispers continued, reminding everyone that Princess Zalika was feared, not loved, and that something needed to change someday. One bright morning in the kingdom of Mariela, a gathering was held in the palace courtyard. The villagers had been invited to witness the arrival of royal guests from a neighboring kingdom. Musicians tuned their drums and flutes, children ran to see the colorful banners, and women carried baskets of food to offer the visitors. Everyone was excited, but a quiet tension lingered whenever Princess Zalika appeared. People knew her temper and sharp tongue, and they feared what she might say or do next. Zalika arrived, riding her horse gracefully, her crown shining in the sunlight. Her long dress swayed as she moved, and her jewels sparkled in the morning light. She looked at the crowd with her sharp eyes, judging every face, every step, every gesture. People bowed quickly, some trembling, some whispering under their breath. Even the guards who usually stood confidently straight seemed slightly anxious. Zalika had that kind of presence, it made everyone feel small. As the royal procession came closer to the center of the courtyard, Zalika's gaze fell on an old man trying to move through the crowd. His name was Baresa, a respected elder in the village who had served the kingdom faithfully for decades. His legs were slow and stiff with age, and he carried a walking stick to help him along. Baresa had been coming to gatherings like this for years, sharing stories, wisdom, and advice with young and old alike. Today, however, he was late, and Zalika noticed immediately. She narrowed her eyes and called out in a loud, commanding voice, "Baresa, why do you move so slowly? Is your age making you forget how to walk?" Her voice carried across the courtyard like thunder, and everyone froze. Children stopped running, traders paused their chatter, and even the visiting guests looked confused. Baresa bowed deeply, his face showing both respect and embarrassment. "Forgive me, princess," he said softly. "My legs have grown weak with time, but I meant no disrespect." Zalika laughed, a harsh, sharp sound that made people flinch. "Weak legs?" she said, stepping closer. "You are holding back this entire gathering with your slow steps. Can you not hurry even a little? Do you not care about your kingdom? Or are you too old to care at all?" Her words cut through the air like knives. Baresa lowered his head further, silently wishing he could disappear. The crowd murmured quietly, fearful of drawing her attention. The king, Zalika's father, stood nearby, watching his daughter with deep disappointment. He had raised her with care, hoping she would grow into a wise and compassionate ruler. He had tried to teach her that power was not about fear but about respect. Yet here she was, humiliating a loyal elder in front of everyone. His heart sank as he realized she still did not understand the lessons he had tried to teach. He stepped forward, placing a calming hand on her shoulder. "Zalika," he said softly, "remember that your actions reflect not just on you but on the kingdom. You must treat all people with care. Humility is a true sign of strength, not scorn." Zalika turned her head slightly, glancing at her father. She smirked, a proud, defiant smile, and let out a small laugh. "Father," she said, her voice full of arrogance, "I am the princess. People should obey me. They should fear me if they cannot serve me well. That is how the kingdom stays strong." She spun on her heels and walked a few steps away, her cape trailing behind her. The villagers and royal staff exchanged worried looks. The king's warning had fallen on deaf ears. After the gathering continued, Zalika did not stop noticing small things to criticize. She scolded a young boy named Juma for tying the wrong color ribbon to a banner. She called out a young girl, Nala, for arranging flowers improperly. She demanded that musicians play faster, even though they were carefully performing a traditional song. Every correction, every criticism, every sharp word made the villagers feel small and anxious. They whispered to each other, trying to explain her behavior. "She is proud," one whispered. "She thinks she is better than all of us," said another. But no one dared to respond aloud, not even to defend themselves. Baresa the elder tried to stay calm. He adjusted his robe, bowed to the princess once more, and whispered a prayer under his breath. He had faced Zalika's temper before, but each time it became harder to bear. He knew that many villagers already feared her. Her words spread quickly, and her actions made it clear that she enjoyed the power her harshness gave her. "Patience, Baresa," he whispered. "One day she will learn." Zalika walked to the edge of the courtyard, where a group of traders had set up colorful cloths for display. She frowned at the arrangement. "These colors clash," she said loudly, pointing at the cloths. "Are your eyes blind? How can you show such carelessness to visitors? This is shameful." The traders bowed quickly, afraid of a harsh rebuke, and rearranged their displays as best as they could. Zalika watched with a critical eye until she was satisfied, or until she grew bored. By the afternoon, Zalika had insulted several villagers, teased a few young servants, and criticized nearly everything she saw. The crowd had grown quiet, tense, and subdued. Even the visiting nobles from the neighboring kingdom noticed her behavior. Some exchanged nervous glances, unsure how to respond to the princess who wielded fear like a weapon. They had come expecting a gracious and warm greeting, but Zalika's pride and harshness dominated the day. The king approached her again, gently taking her arm. "Zalika," he said quietly, "you must see the pain your words cause. You have the power to inspire and uplift people, but you are using it to frighten and shame them. Think carefully, my daughter. Your actions affect not only yourself but every life in this kingdom." Zalika looked up at him with a mixture of amusement and arrogance. "Father, they should fear me," she said. "If they do not, the kingdom will be weak. If I allow them to act freely, they will grow careless and lazy. I am only teaching them discipline, even if they do not understand it yet." She smiled proudly and walked away, ignoring his disappointed sigh. The king's heart felt heavy, but he could only hope she would one day realize the truth of his words. As the sun began to set, the gathering ended. Villagers returned to their homes quietly, avoiding eye contact with the princess. Children whispered stories of Zalika's sharp tongue. Traders shook their heads sadly at her pride. Elders murmured about the lessons she had yet to learn. Even though the day had been bright and full of celebration, the fear of Zalika's anger hung over the village like a dark cloud. Zalika returned to the palace, her steps steady and confident. She ignored the whispers behind her, the bowed heads and the careful glances. In her mind she had done nothing wrong. She believed she had taught the villagers a lesson in respect. She believed she had proven her authority. She believed she was strong even if others disagreed. That evening in her private chambers she looked out over the kingdom. The golden sunlight glinted off the rooftops and the fields, and the river reflected the sky's colors. Zalika smiled to herself, pleased with the order she imagined she had created. She did not notice the worried look on the faces of her servants or the sadness of the villagers who had once admired her. She did not realize that her cruelty and pride were spreading fear instead of loyalty. Yet even as she rested, unaware, the kingdom quietly waited. The sun shone brightly over the kingdom of Mariela as the royal palace prepared for an important ceremony. Guests from faraway lands had arrived, bringing gifts, music, and colorful clothes. The entire kingdom had been buzzing with excitement for days. This ceremony was meant to show the strength, grace, and unity of the royal family. Every person in the palace and in the kingdom had a role to play, from the royal guards to the gardeners, and from the musicians to the chefs. But Princess Zalika had only one thought. She wanted to be the center of attention, and she wanted everything done exactly as she wished. As the ceremony began, Zalika entered the grand hall, her dress shimmering in the sunlight. She waved her hand to the villagers and nobles who had come to witness the event, expecting them to bow deeply in her honor. When the music started, she interrupted it immediately. "Play faster. Do not let the drums be so slow. The people will fall asleep if your rhythm is dull," she shouted, pointing at the royal musicians. The drummer stumbled nervously, trying to keep pace, but Zalika waved her hand again, showing her dissatisfaction. She leaned forward, glaring at the visiting nobles, and muttered loudly about how ordinary their clothing looked. Some of the guests blushed with embarrassment. Others whispered quickly to each other, unsure if they should defend themselves. When the royal feast was set, Zalika refused to sit at the proper table. She demanded that a new table be placed in the center of the hall, adorned with golden cloth, silver plates, and the freshest fruits and desserts. Servants hurried to obey, rushing across the hall, balancing heavy trays. Some dropped their plates and Zalika laughed sharply. "Is this all the skill you have? You call yourselves servants of the kingdom?" Her words rang across the hall. People held their breath, afraid of her anger. The king looked down, hiding his frustration, and tried to calm her, but Zalika ignored him completely. She was determined to have everything her way, and she did not care who noticed or who suffered in the process. The ceremony continued, but Zalika's behavior only worsened. She demanded that the visiting guests bow more deeply to her than to the king himself. She refused to wait patiently for speeches and announcements. Every time someone tried to speak, she interrupted, insisting that her opinion was more important. Some of the nobles began to whisper among themselves, questioning the princess's attitude. The villagers in the hall exchanged worried glances. They had long feared her sharp tongue, but today her actions were becoming unbearable. Baresa, the elder, stood quietly near the side of the hall, shaking his head, realizing that this time, even the king's patience might not be enough. At last, the final moment of the ceremony arrived. The moment where the king was supposed to give a speech, blessing the kingdom and welcoming the guests. Zalika, however, could not wait. She stood on the steps of the dais and demanded the attention of everyone present. "Everyone listen," she shouted. "I am the princess. I should speak first. I deserve the finest seat and the loudest applause." The musicians fell silent, the guests froze, and even the royal guards looked confused. The king stepped forward, placing his hand gently on her shoulder. "Zalika," he said quietly but firmly, "this is not your moment. It is my duty as king to speak to our guests first. Patience and respect are necessary." Zalika turned to him, her eyes flashing with pride and anger. "I will not wait. I am more important than any speech," she shouted, stepping forward as though she could push the king aside. The guests gasped. The court fell into silence. Even the villagers who had attended felt embarrassed and afraid. Zalika's insistence embarrassed the royal family in front of the guests and dishonored the ceremony they had worked so hard to prepare. The king sighed deeply. He had tried patience, kindness, and warnings, but now the princess had crossed a line that could not be ignored. He looked around the hall and noticed the council members, the wise advisors of the kingdom, standing with serious expressions. They had watched Zalika's actions closely. Murmurs ran among the council. Everyone agreed that her behavior could not continue if the kingdom was to maintain its dignity. After the ceremony ended, the council met in the private chamber. The king spoke solemnly. "Zalika's behavior today is unacceptable. She has embarrassed our family, our guests, and our kingdom. We must take action." The councillors nodded. They discussed various ways to teach the princess humility, to help her understand the responsibility that came with her title, and to correct the pride and cruelty that had grown in her heart. Inside the palace, Princess Zalika began her new life as a maid. The first morning, she woke early to the sound of the palace bell and the smell of fresh bread baking in the kitchen. She had never risen this early by choice. Normally, she would wake slowly, stretching in her soft bed, surrounded by silk sheets and golden curtains. Now, she had to get up quickly, put on her simple uniform, and begin work without complaint. The dress felt heavy on her arms, the apron stiff and rough against her skin. She looked in the mirror, seeing a reflection she hardly recognized. The proud princess had become a servant, and it hurt her pride deeply. Sifa, the kind-hearted maid who had worked in the palace for many years, was assigned to guide her. "Do not worry, Zalika," Sifa said softly, "you will learn. The work is not easy, but it teaches strength and patience. I will help you." Zalika frowned and muttered, "I do not need help. I am a princess. I should not be doing this." Sifa nodded quietly, understanding that Zalika would take time to accept her new role. She did not argue or scold her. Instead, she led Zalika to the first task, sweeping the main hall. Zalika grumbled as she picked up the broom. The palace floors were large and polished, and she had to bend and sweep in long, even strokes. Her arms quickly became sore and her back ached. She noticed how the other maids moved with ease, their bodies used to the rhythm of work. Zalika's movements were awkward, clumsy, and slow. She dropped the broom once and Sifa gently picked it up for her. "Try again," Sifa said kindly. "There is no shame in learning." Zalika huffed but followed the instructions, repeating the motion over and over until she began to get the rhythm. She noticed for the first time how much effort the maids put into every small task, and how they worked without complaint, smiling quietly as they completed their duties. After sweeping, Zalika was asked to wash clothes in the courtyard. A large wooden tub was filled with water, and piles of linen, sheets and garments were stacked beside it. She dipped the fabric into the cold water, scrubbed and rubbed with all her strength, trying to remove stains. The water soon became gray and soapy, and her hands grew red and stiff from the cold. She grumbled loudly, wishing she were back in her chambers with silk gowns and golden slippers. Sifa gently reminded her, "It is hard at first, but you will learn to see the effort behind each piece of clothing. Every stitch, every fold matters." Zalika looked at her and realized that Sifa was right. These tasks, though tiring and uncomfortable, kept the palace running smoothly. She began to feel a new sense of respect for the people who did this work every day. In the kitchen, Django, the cook, guided her through preparing food. He was patient, explaining the steps clearly, showing her how to chop vegetables, stir pots and measure ingredients. At first, Zalika spilled flour on the floor, dropped eggs and burned a small batch of dough. Each mistake embarrassed her. She wanted to shout and say, "I am a princess. This is not my place." But Django smiled gently and said, "Mistakes happen. Focus on learning and soon you will do better." His patience calmed her, though she did not admit it to him. Slowly she began to pay attention, trying harder with every step. As the days passed, Zalika's work became a routine. She woke early, completed her tasks and went to bed exhausted. She noticed the effort required in every role within the palace. Sifa's gentle words encouraged her. Django's patience showed her that skill came from practice, not from fear. Slowly, Zalika began to see the lives of others in a new light. She thought about the villagers who bowed quickly when she arrived in the past, the traders she had insulted, and the servants she had ignored. For the first time, she understood that everyone worked hard in their own way, even if she had not noticed before. One afternoon, Zalika carried a heavy pot of water from the well to the kitchen. Her arms shook under the weight and she almost dropped it. Sifa quickly took the pot, steadying it, and said, "You see, Zalika, it is not easy to carry this for even a short distance. Every person in this palace works hard every day, even for small tasks." Zalika nodded, her cheeks warming. She realized she had never appreciated the effort that went into keeping the palace clean, safe, and functioning. For the first time, she felt humility creeping into her heart. The proud princess who had once shouted at everyone was beginning to understand what it meant to respect others. One evening, as she washed the last dishes of the day, Zalika paused and looked around the kitchen. The warm light of the setting sun spilled through the windows, casting a golden glow over the pots, pans and neatly stacked dishes. She saw the patience in Django's movements, the care in Sifa's sweeping, and the quiet smiles of the other staff members. A strange feeling of gratitude and admiration filled her. She whispered softly to herself, "They work so hard, and I never noticed before." She felt a small change within her heart. A seed of kindness had been planted. Over the following weeks, Zalika continued her tasks with more attention and care. She still made mistakes, but she tried harder. She listened to Sifa's advice, followed Django's instructions, and even began helping other maids when they struggled with their work. The palace staff noticed her effort and smiled quietly. They knew she was learning slowly, but any change was worth encouragement. Zalika too began to feel the pride of accomplishment in a new way, not through fear but through effort and patience. One day, while cleaning the main hall, Zalika saw a young servant struggling to carry a tray of fruit. She stepped forward instinctively and helped steady the tray. The boy looked at her in surprise, but she smiled gently and said, "Let me help you." For the first time she felt a joy she had never known, the joy of helping someone without showing off, the quiet happiness of kindness. She realized that respect could be earned not by shouting or fear, but by care and thoughtfulness. Sifa noticed the change in her pupil and smiled. "You are learning, Zalika," she said. "Patience, effort and kindness are stronger than fear and pride. Keep practicing and your heart will grow even stronger." Zalika nodded, feeling warmth in her chest. She still had a long way to go, but for the first time she felt that learning humility was possible. She had begun to understand the lives of others, the value of effort and the importance of kindness. As weeks turned into months, Zalika's behavior continued to improve. She laughed more softly, spoke more kindly, and treated everyone she met with greater respect. She still remembered her royal title, but now she understood that power came with responsibility, care, and thoughtfulness. She could never have learned this lesson while sitting on a golden throne or shouting at the villagers. Only through service, patience, and observation had her heart begun to change. One evening as the sun set over Mariela, Zalika stood beside Sifa and Django, looking at the palace gardens. The flowers glowed in the golden light, and the soft breeze carried the scent of jasmine and roses. Zalika realized that she had changed in ways she could not have imagined. She felt proud, but in a new way, not proud of her title or jewels but proud of her effort, her patience and the kindness she had learned to show others. Her heart felt lighter and for the first time she felt the joy of true understanding. Zalika smiled at Sifa and Django. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I never knew life could be so hard, and so beautiful at the same time." Sifa smiled back and Django nodded. "You are learning, princess," he said. "One day your heart will guide you better than any crown ever could." And so, inside the palace, the once proud Princess Zalika continued her work. She swept, scrubbed, carried and learned, but each task taught her patience, humility and kindness. Slowly, the villagers and palace staff who had once feared her would one day see a new princess, one who had discovered the power of respect, service and a gentle heart. The season of work had passed, and the palace was quiet in the early morning as Princess Zalika prepared for her return to her royal duties. She had spent weeks, then months as a palace maid, learning to sweep floors, wash clothes, carry water, and assist the cooks and other staff. At first, she had complained, her pride bruised and her heart heavy with frustration. But gradually, under the guidance of Sifa the maid and Django the cook, she had learned patience, kindness and humility. She had seen the effort required to serve others, the struggles of the palace staff, and the care that went into every small task. Zalika dressed in a simple, clean gown for the first time in months, but unlike her former royal gowns, this dress reminded her of what she had learned. She had polished her hands, smoothed her hair, and carried herself with a quiet confidence that had nothing to do with jewels or crowns. She stepped out into the palace courtyard, breathing in the fresh morning air. The staff who had worked with her smiled warmly, recognizing her gentle demeanor. They no longer feared her sharp tongue. Her father, the king, stood at the gates, waiting for her. He saw a daughter different from the one who had caused so much trouble. Her shoulders were straighter, but her expression was softer. She approached him and bowed respectfully. "Father," she said quietly, "I have learned much. Thank you for guiding me." The king's eyes glistened with pride. He had hoped that this season of work would teach her what no lessons, warnings, or reprimands could, and now he saw the results. As Zalika returned to her royal duties, she walked through the village streets. For the first time, she greeted the villagers with gentle words instead of harsh commands. "Good morning, Ruto," she said to a woman selling baskets. "Your baskets are beautiful today." Ruto, who had once feared her, smiled widely. "Thank you, Princess Zalika," she replied, her voice warm. A young boy named Juma waved at her and she waved back. Children who had run from her before now ran happily toward her, unafraid. Zalika visited the market more often, speaking kindly to the traders and helping when she could. She learned the names of the villagers and asked how their families were doing. She listened patiently, no longer interrupting or mocking them. The villagers began to tell stories of the new princess, the one who had once been feared but now treated them with respect and care. Whispers of the cruel princess faded into memories, replaced with admiration and gratitude. Inside the palace, Zalika worked alongside her royal staff but in a different way. She observed, helped and guided without belittling anyone. When a young maid struggled to carry a basket, Zalika stepped forward to help, showing the strength she had gained through her time as a servant. When the cooks were busy, she offered to assist in small tasks, learning once again the value of patience and attention to detail. Sifa and Django watched her quietly, proud that she had truly embraced the lessons of humility and service. One day Zalika saw Baresa, the elder who she had insulted long ago during the ceremony. He was sitting outside his small house, tending to his garden. She walked over and greeted him gently. "Baresa, I am sorry for my words before," she said sincerely. "I did not understand the weight of my actions. Please forgive me." Baresa looked at her with kind eyes and smiled. "Princess Zalika, your words are heard and accepted. You have learned well." Zalika felt a warmth spread through her chest. She understood that apologies were not a sign of weakness but of strength, of recognizing mistakes and growing from them. The villagers began to see Zalika's change in her actions and words. She helped carry water when there was a shortage. She helped organize small village events, asking for advice and listening carefully. She encouraged children to study and praised those who worked hard. Slowly the kingdom grew happier. Fear was replaced with respect, respect with admiration, and admiration with genuine affection. Even in the palace, Zalika made sure to speak with kindness to her staff, the guards and her advisors. She listened patiently when they shared their thoughts and she thanked them for their hard work. The palace became a place of warmth and cooperation, rather than fear and tension. She had learned that true leadership required humility, understanding and service, not just power or wealth. One afternoon, the king invited Zalika to a special gathering in the main hall. He addressed the villagers and the staff, praising the changes in the princess. "Our daughter," he said, "has learned that the true strength of a leader is measured not by fear, but by care, kindness and service. She has worked beside our staff, understood their efforts, and grown into a leader worthy of respect and love." The villagers cheered, clapping their hands and smiling broadly. Zalika bowed humbly, feeling the pride of accomplishment in a way she had never known before.